tonight at 6:30, please, everybody be here. It's going to be a night of worship, and then we're going to be sharing some things. I've asked different people from the ministry team and some others. Those of you that I've asked to speak, you've got an email from me, so if you have any questions about that, see me afterwards. But this is where we're at, and this is what we're trying to do with Sunday night. There's so much happening that it makes it impossible on Sunday morning to keep everybody up on where we are. I mean, we could just spend every Sunday morning just talking nuts and bolts stuff, and that's not really why we're coming together. So this Sunday tonight, what we're going to do is there's going to be worship, there's going to be declaration, but we're going to share some of the more business part of what's going on. I've asked Laurie to bring a report on what Sozo has done and what that's looking like. Sedonia and Virginia are launching this ladies mentoring program that's going to be awesome, and I want to share about that. So it's going to be talking about a lot of the things that we're doing. At the end of the night, myself and John Trimble and Tim Smith are going to kind of wrap up some things, kind of looking at this apostolic culture that we're in and what we're seeing and where we see that going. So it's, I promise you, it will be worth being here. But it's just going to start. I feel like we're at a place where I don't know how often we're going to be doing those. At least every 6 months, it may be quarterly even. But we're just at this place that to keep everybody informed in what we're doing or where we're going, especially for those of you that are relatively new to the church, then it's difficult sometimes to figure out. I don't know, everybody's busy, but I couldn't tell you what the heck they do around here. Well, we don't want you to work that hard. We want to try to make it as easy as possible, and Sunday night is our attempt at that. So please come out. If you're not here, then we can't talk to you. Some have asked, and this isn't an excuse to stay home, but we will live stream it. It's not announced as a live stream, but we will be live streaming because we do have several people that are out of town and away, and have asked could we do that so they could be here so they don't miss it. And we'll archive it. But that's We may password it. You're going to have to fill out a questionnaire before we give you access. What are you doing? What are you wearing? Where are you at? What's the water temperature? Yeah. Have you caught a fish yet? I mean, we'll just ask some general questions just to kind of get a feel on what's going on. Who's winning the race? Okay. I said to you guys a while back, it was probably in end of February into March. I hit one of those places where normally I have kind of an ongoing personal study of things. You know, I'm reading books or whatever, and I just hit this point where I had finished everything I had been working on, and I had no real clear direction to where I was going. So I went for about a month or so where I just didn't really have anything. You know, I mean, I'm still reading, but not with any real purpose or design, just reading. And I'm praying about it. Well, Lord, for us as the church, what do you want to say to us? Where are we going? What do you know? What's this all going to look like? And I was kind of answering or asking those questions. And in the midst of it, the Lord, I just felt one morning, He said, I want you to go and read the book of Job. And then I want you to preach the book of Job out of the new covenant. You know, yeah, I ain't never done that before. But I don't think I can do that. He says, you're right. But we're going to do it together. So what I'm going to attempt to give you guys over the next weeks is Abba's and my journey through the book of Job. Job is one of those books that some wish you could just rip it out of the Bible and throw it away. And for others, the book of Job is the fifth gospel of the New Testament. Neither of which are true. So what I'm going to do this morning, we're not going to really get into the book today. I want to lay some foundational things. What I would ask everybody to do is start reading the book of Job. And I would ask you to, it's only 42 chapters, so it's not that long. what I want you to pray, because when you pray this, you'll be in sync with me with what I pray. Because one of the things that the Lord instructed me about is when you read the book of Job, this is how he told me to do it. Is I want you to read it straight through the first time, giving little thought to think anything other than exactly what the word on the page is saying. So don't build into what you're reading your preconceived understanding of what you think the book of Job says. For some of us, you may go, well, that's easy. I don't have a preconceived. For others of us, it's going to be a real struggle. For me personally, it was a real struggle. I found I had to mentally check some things out in order to just read it for the sake of reading it. So read it just like you picked up a new novel that you've never read before, and you're just going to read it through. The second time you read it, ask Holy Spirit, show me the heart of the Father in this book. Job is in the Bible for a reason. It is part of the Word of God. And it's been misappropriated at times. People have left it alone at times. People have discounted it and said, well, that's old covenant. We don't need that. And so the book of Job has been used in a lot of different ways. What I hope to do in this time as we're going to be studying this, we're not going to go verse by any means, but we are going to go idea from idea. The book of Job is laid out, whether Job's speaking or one of the other guys are speaking. It's basically laid out in a general thought that each of them are trying to express, and they express it through the way it would be expressed in the Hebrew language, but they're giving us a thought, and then another one will counter that thought. And so what we get is this progression of ideas through the book of Job, and it really is rich. It's rich. So in the handout that I gave, there's a map. Isn't that great? I mean, we're going to start out with maps. And I even did it in color. The handouts are coming if you don't have one. But the interesting thing, the land of Uz, which is where the story of Job takes place, You know, Uz is down in what we now call like Saudi Arabia, down in that peninsula. And the reason why I like this particular map is that it shows where the migration of the three sons of Noah went. And so Job is actually out of the land that was settled by the descendants of Shem. So let me just kind of read through some of this stuff, and then I'm going to get to what I really want to talk about today, which I'm glad not all of you have your notes yet, because then you won't be nervous till I get there. Okay, a couple of things. When we start talking about Job, Job was a contemporary of Abram. Now, there's about 4 different ideas of when the book of Job was written, but most biblical scholars hold that Job was actually written by Job, and it was written, and he lived in the same time frame that Abram or Abraham lived. So he would have been a contemporary. He was down in the south, and Abraham was up in the land of Ur, so he was up in the north and ultimately migrated down. Job stayed in the land of Uz. He was a patriarch. How do we know that? Because the Bible starts off, and we'll look at this at another point, but the Bible starts off giving us the list of wealth that Job had, the list of his animals, the list of his holdings. So to be in that time frame, to be owning that much would have made you a patriarch in the land to which you lived. You would have been one of the primary leaders of that area. Your wealth would have been what gave you access to that. So Job was a very wealthy man. The third thing, or the fourth thing, Job would have lived approximately 158 years after the death of Noah. And Noah died. Everybody's holding the paper way away. Is the print font too small? Okay. If you have it on your iPad, you can just enlarge it. That's what I do. So Job lived 158 years after the death of Noah, and Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So within this time frame, we're looking at about 500 years, 503 years from the end of the flood to Job. Why is that important? Because at this time, you figure for the descendants of Shem, as they came into the land, they would have brought with them the oral history of the flood. So that story and the subsequent dealings would have been told over and over and over again, because it was an oral history. Written history had not yet really started. So the oral history of the flood would have been something that Job was very familiar with. I think it's important to understand that when you start reading through the book, because Job and his friends, all from this region, are reflecting their understanding of who God is based on the oral tradition from the flood to their present time. And so why is that important? Well, that's important because we have a tendency to read the book of Job and try to pull it into our culture, our time, and our understanding. And when you do that, you misrepresent what the book says. Because it isn't in my time, it isn't in my culture, and it didn't come to me the way it would have come to Job. It would have come to him through the oral history. These things would have been recounted and recounted and so on. So it's important to see that we're in relatively close proximity to the flood. Now, think about that. We're just 500 years away from the flood. Well, we're not just 500 years away from the Battle of Waterloo. We're 500 years away from a catastrophic event that changed the whole earth. Nothing after that happened, the earth was never the same again, and we only have one family that could tell us what it was like before, and they came through this event, and only one family that has the ability to give the direct oral history of what actually took place. So these people are living in an age where they would talk about of that. So there would be, within the people group, there would be a very different understanding of what history looks like. And you have to grasp that if you're going to see the fullness of the book of Job, because that's what that's how they're speaking. That's their reference point. And so in that, what's the major event? That the world was so full of wickedness that God said, I'm going to destroy the whole. I'm done with all people. That's it. You're all gone. And then after that, he changed his mind because he looked around and he saw Noah. And it says that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah, that's an interesting thing, that he found grace. Noah didn't find the escape clause. He didn't find the get out of jail card. He didn't find something less. Somehow, in the midst of a world that is full of wickedness, so much so that God says, I only have one alternative with this, and I'm destroying it all. It has become so wicked, it's not changeable. So I'm done. And somehow, in the midst of that wicked and perverse system, this guy named Noah somehow found grace. That's phenomenal. It doesn't really give us a big explanation of how he did that. It just says Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah didn't find